College World Series Finals. We finally made it here. And, it's been a long season. It's been a lot of fun. We really enjoyed doing it this year. And, nobody better to have with me in the final weekend of the season than my guy, Doug Ziefel, here to help me break down what should be a fantastic final matchup between the Tennessee Volunteers and the Texas A&M Aggies, man. Just a couple of chalk latte picks. But ultimately, it was two teams that were dominant throughout the entire year, two of the best, I would say, 3 or 4 teams over the course of the regular season. And this is it. This is what we worked for all year. And, Doug, welcome to the program, brother. Appreciate you being able to come on.
Yeah, it's great to be back, Johnny. This time of the year is bittersweet, because we're going to see the best against the best here. It's all on the line. But it also means the end of the season is here, too. So we got to enjoy it while it lasts.
I got to be honest, don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. I love doing this. I absolutely love it. I love writing my articles for RotoWire every week. I love doing the podcast. I love getting out my plays. It's truly one of my favorite things to do. I wouldn't do it if I didn't enjoy it. I love the grind. But, for guys like us who take this very seriously and do a lot of podcasts and do articles and do a lot of the research in order to give people bet-worthy plays, it takes a lot of time and energy. And, it's not just having to go in and look at the numbers. Like, a lot of our research comes from consistently every weekend from the end of February till now, to just be sitting home watching these games nonstop 3-4 days a week. And it's exhausting, man. I'm ready. I'm ready for the summer. I'm ready to kind of just chill out and dial it back, for the month of July and August. And, as we get ready towards the NFL season. But dude, it's really been a pleasure, man. It really has.
Yeah, it's been awesome. This has honestly been the most, not like in tune, but like excited I've been in covering college baseball here, and especially starting it over at Action. I got this started over at Action for the last 3 seasons, and it's been tremendous. I got it off the ground, and just to see the game grow and to see the betting markets grow and to see everybody that's coming in to bet it, it just makes me so happy that people like us, Johnny, all the other guys we've had on here, help grow the game, because college baseball.
I think you're cutting out, but no, I completely agree. And listen, obviously, it didn't go our way this year with Florida State. Was a disappointment. Obviously, especially when you have teams like Tennessee, if you give them an inch, they'll take a mile. And the first game where Florida State should have won, we could look back at the Blake Burke check swing, and that ultimately was the deciding factor. But at the same time, Florida State can't let that happen. They had a lot of opportunities to close the door. Instead of Tennessee losing game 1 and having to come out of the losers bracket, that changes the entire field for everybody. Same thing with Texas A&M. Florida was inches away from possibly stealing game 1 in the 9th inning with Cade Curlin's should have been go-ahead home run to put Florida up by 2. But instead, Jim Schlossnagle takes Jace Lavalette out of center field, where he's played all season long, to put him in right field. And that ended up being the difference, because his 6'6" frame was able to get up and rob that home run. If Chestnut was in right field, that ball's over the fence, and we might be seeing a different result. So, things happen the way they do. And obviously last year, the Wake Forest thing was 1 game away from the finals. So that hurts a little bit. But, at the end of the day, hopefully we get this little Charlie Condon Golden Spikes ticket to cash that I've been holding on to for almost the whole season. So looking forward to that. But Doug, let's preview here the entire College World Series Finals before we get into tonight's matchup. What are you looking for? Where do you think the advantages lie? Is there something that a team who's an underdog like Texas A&M has to do in order to upset the Volunteers and get their first ever program title?
Well, yeah, it all starts with winning game 1. Prager's going to go tonight. This is their best opportunity to get a game, and they're going to have to do it, and they're going to have to do it early because where Tennessee has the advantage here is they have pitching depth, and the Aggies are going to have to get the bats going early. We've seen games where they really have not exploded offensively like we saw them during the regular season throughout the rest of the regionals. A lot of that has to do with the ballpark, which another thing we can touch on later is the weather. But the Aggies need to get off to a good start, and they need to steal game one if they want to really be in this series.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think game one is important more for A&M than it is Tennessee for a couple reasons. Number one, because the reason why Texas A&M has been able to survive and go 3-0 to this point is because they've really had to rely on just like 4 or 5 key figures. And really that's all in the pitching. Ryan Prager was nails against Kentucky in their second game. Lampkin was good in the first and the third game, actually both games against Florida. Aschenbeck, Cortez, those have been just the staples of the Texas A&M bullpen all year long. So no surprise there. I'm sorry, I forget the other kid's name that came in and was pretty good. Was it Stewart? Was it Josh Stewart, the righty? I apologize, I forget his name, but he was nails as well. And I think that's really where it's been lying for the Aggies at this point. And get Prager on the mound in game one with all your weapons at your disposal. And then, you have a guy like Lampkin who has just a knack for stepping up in the big moment. He had a rough year from pretty much that right after that Mississippi State start where he had double-digit punches over 7 innings. I think he only allowed 1 run. That was in late March. So he's kind of had a little resurrection himself. And I think, especially if you're Texas A&M, if you go out there and you swing and miss with Prager on the mound and you use some of your key bullpen guys in a close game, then you're really on the back foot the rest of the way because your relievers are going to have to be thrown on short rest. You're going to have to just try and figure it out with guys like Tanner Jones, who hasn't really been a key member of this pitching rotation in a while. And I think, for Texas A&M especially, they're definitely the more banged up team. Obviously they lose Braden Montgomery, they lose Shane Sadeo. They don't have for the entire College World Series. But then you have your guy who I personally think is the number 1 pick next year in Jace Lavalette, who's just been struggling. And he's had to really gut it out since that Kentucky game where he kind of banged up his hamstring. He hasn't looked the same. And, you're losing an explosive athlete who's great in the field, who's really good on the base paths, and who's an absolute terror in the batter's box. So I think, the longer this series goes, the more it goes in favor of the Tennessee Volunteers. And, even though they don't, in my opinion, have really any top-end pitching like they did last year or 2 years ago, the same way A&M does, they still can run out 8-9 guys to string together outs. That's what they do. And they've been doing that all year, and it's no surprise. But, Doug, kick me off. Game one, A&M is a sizable underdog at plus 140 for Tennessee's minus 180 in an 11.5 total. How do you see game one unfolding?
Well, there's definitely going to be runs because, like I mentioned before, the wind has been a big factor in this College World Series. It has killed a lot of balls. We've seen a handful of games where teams have been able to hit through the wind. This Tennessee team was one of them in the opener against Florida State. But the wind is a big factor. And in game one, this is going to be one of the first games where the wind is blowing out and it's hot. So that's going to give a boost to both of these lineups. So that's why you've seen the total. It opened at 10.5. It's up to 11.5. I even saw some 12s pop up early this morning. But there's definitely going to be runs. But then you have to factor in the pitching, though. You got Prager, and you've got the combo of Stamos and Causey that are going to try to extinguish it. You have 3 solid arms that you're going to see for at least the first half of this game, and then full-strength bullpens. However, I think with the Volunteers lineup, it's like a war of attrition here. You know, Prager is somebody who we saw dominate against Kentucky. You know, took a no-hitter into the 7th, but if he like you said earlier, if he gives this Tennessee team an inch, they're gonna put traffic on the bases and they're gonna scratch out runs.
I think one of the things that we've noticed, and mainly it was Florida State. The reason why Tennessee was able to not only hang around but win both games was because you look at the Seminoles, and what they did was just consistently give Tennessee out runs, extra opportunities, and you can't do that against a team like this. And, you look at Florida State, where they obviously should have won game 1, but then even in the second game where they played, how many times was Florida State throwing the ball around? There was a couple extra runs that shouldn't have been scored, but it was because of self-inflicted wounds. And I think when you're looking at the Aggies, who, talent-wise, fully loaded, both teams, everybody healthy, I think this is very close. So with the sense that A&M's kind of playing, on the back foot a little bit, they have to do a lot of these little things right. When you have an opportunity to throw out a runner, don't throw the ball away. When you have an opportunity to get a double play, get it done. Don't try to do things that you don't normally do, because that's what Tennessee tries to, bait teams into. I think for me personally here in this game 1, you've heard me talk about how Tennessee's been vulnerable against quality lefty starters all season. That has been true. You look at Jamie Arnold, a lot of the damage was because he was getting behind in counts. He wasn't sharp. A lot of it was probably had to do with nerves. The defense did not play well. Made him throw extra pitches, kind of puts extra stress on it. Ryan Prager is a guy who's a little bit more experienced. He is a redshirt sophomore, but he's had to be their guy all year. And I think when you look at Prager, who's had a very strong season, he's got a 2.88 ERA, 119 Ks, 20 walks. Excuse me. This has been their guy. And I don't think Tennessee gets shut down by any stretch. I don't think they explode, though. I think Prager's going to have a good game. I could see him go out there 5-6 innings, 3 runs, maybe 4, and then you bring in Cortez and Ashenbeck to clean it up. I think realistically, A&M can keep Tennessee to 5 runs or less. And that's actually how I'm approaching this game. I do feel like if A&M's going to win one, it's got to be game 1. If they lose game 1, they're going to get swept. I don't think they have enough firepower to come back from down 0-1 to even force a game 3. So for that, I don't have enough juice right now to say I'm taking Texas A&M on the money line, Doug, but I do think A&M keeps this close. That's why I kind of bought an extra run. One of my plays is having A&M plus 2.5, and I'm going to pay the 180 for it. I know it's a little steep, but I see this as being a very close game. I see this as being a 5-3 or a 4-2 or a 6-4 kind of contest where it's going to go down to the wire, just because that's how these two teams play. So I think while we're looking at Texas A&M staying in line with this game, I also think this is going to be a little bit more on the lower side of things, even with the wind blowing out. I feel like we could see runs in bunches, probably a little bit more towards the 5th inning. I feel like some nerves for Ryan Prager won't be as dramatic as other pitchers. And I think, for the first couple innings, I could see through 3 innings this being a 0-0 kind of game.
Yeah, you see, I'm opposite with you with that last point. The one play that I do have tonight, because I'm not really going to get too involved in this series and the side and total, because off of FanDuel, Tennessee beat the Aggies in this series at plus 340. So I'm just going to keep that in my pocket for this series. But I'm going to be messing around with a lot of game props and stuff here. And one that I like tonight is both teams to score by the 3rd inning. Is minus 125 on DraftKings. I talked about before how I think the Aggies are going to be able to get to Chris Stamos here. He's going to be their opener. Though we've seen Vitale already have a short leash with him, he'll probably be out there for 2 to 3 innings. And he's due for regression. Other side, Prager. Prager has, aside from his last outing, hasn't been the sharpest over his last 5. And like I said, it's hard to keep this Tennessee lineup down. So for him to go through the order once and not give up a run, it seems unlikely to me. So that's one of my plays tonight.
I understand. I completely get it. I took an all under 12.5, and I'm paying a little bit more for it at -158. And the reason is just because I think if there's a game that's going to be lower scoring, it's going to be this one. I could see this one being a lesser run scored game than maybe we'll get tomorrow. And if game 3 happens, game 3, here's the thing, right? Say A&M wins this game 1 and they win 5-2 or even 7-5, and that's 12 runs. I see Sunday's game, and if we get there, Monday's game kind of get towards that 15 mark total, because I don't think Drew Beam's going to shut down A&M. I just don't. Drew Beam he's had a big regression this year, and while some of his advanced metrics might look good, it's just you could tell he doesn't look like the same pitcher. Like if you watch Drew Beam enough, you could tell at certain points he's on, but then one little thing happens and then he just becomes unraveled. And Tennessee's bullpen's good, but it's not elite. It's not lockdown. So I think there's more opportunities later on in the series for runs to be scored. And this was kind of more of a gut thing where I'm like, I think Ryan Prager is going to pitch one of his best games of the year. And, if he goes out there and he goes 5 innings, 3 runs, or 6 innings, even 4 runs, then you have Cortez and Aschenbeck to settle the storm a little bit. And we've seen that. When we saw that Connor Whitaker against Tennessee in the first game for Florida State, he settled the storm down. In the mid innings, he was the guy that kind of kept Tennessee off balance. And even still, Joe Charles in the second game for Florida State, he 4 to 3rd, I think he let up no or 1 run, and he was kind of that guy. And I think as long as Brian Prager is able to go out there and go 4 runs or less over 5 or 6 innings, I think this is a path for this to be a lower scoring game, because A&M's offense hasn't done much. They scored 6 runs against Florida in the last game because Liam Peterson walked the whole ballpark in the first inning. And they only scored 4 runs against Florida in the first game that they played. Kentucky, I think they only scored 3 or 4 runs against Kentucky with Mason Moore throwing. So I just don't know if I'm buying the Aggies to score that much. And if the pitching does what it's supposed to, then I get the feeling that we're going to be looking at something that's a little bit tighter, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with you. Everything lines up for this to be a tighter game, especially with the bullpens being rested, and they'll be able to throw all their best arms out of the pen today if anybody falters. It definitely lines up well, but we've seen Tennessee's lineup explode. Like you said, runs in bunches has been a theme for Tennessee. And I just, if there's any faltering from the A&M staff, it feels like there could be not a crooked number, but maybe a 3-4 run inning, some type of explosion there. Definitely, I feel like that's coming, But that kind of goes into my second play though tonight. The only other play I have, and I took this from our friend Noah Beanick. I saw he talked it up last night on his podcast, and it's a nice little way to get in on the Volunteers without paying their money line price. You can take Tennessee not to bat in the 9th inning on DraftKings for -130, and like I said, that's a way basically to take them to be up entering the 9th here.
Mm-hmm.
So take the discount by about 50 cents, depending on what this closes at. That's a nice little angle if you want to be on the balls.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think that's something that I would definitely look at. I highly doubt this thing is going to go to extra innings, or Tennessee has to walk it off in the ninth. But at the end of the day, one of the things I'm kind of looking for, I want to see if A&M takes this first game, right? Because we talked about it. This is their best shot to take a game. If they do somehow find a way to win, then I like jumping on Tennessee to win the series at what's a discount. They're minus 225 right now over at BetMGM with the Aggies being plus 180. So if they lose this first game, Tennessee does, then the odds become increasingly more favorable because they have to win 2 games to Texas A&M's 1. But what happens here, right? If A&M goes out there and let's say Prager gives them 5 and he throws 100 pitches, and then Cortez comes out for 6 and 7 and he gives them, 2 good innings, but he ends up throwing like 55 pitches or 50 pitches. And then Ashenbeck comes in for the last 2 innings and he gives them, 2 good innings, but he ends up throwing 40 to 50 pitches. Now you're in a position where tomorrow leans heavily in favor of the Vols. And with A&M having a game to burn, they might go look and throw like Brad Rudis or Tanner Jones because they don't have to have it. And then, in that turn, they would look to try and give Cortez and Ashenbeck a little bit of rest. And then you'd have Justin Lampkin presumably for the game 3 against Xander Seacrest with Cortez and Ashenbeck back. So I think there's a couple different ways to look at this. I wouldn't buy Tennessee right now at minus 225. But, I do think there is an avenue to get in on them should they lose game 1. But let's get to some player props because I find these very interesting. Let me do a little screen share here. Let's see. Sorry, give me one sec. Okay. So as you can see, there's home run props, which is pretty good. Now, here's the thing. So if you're looking at Tennessee, player props against Ryan Prager via the home run. Prager's actually allowed 12 home runs this year. And even though, he's been really good, that's been his bugaboo. He's allowed no home runs in his 1 start against Kentucky in the College World Series, but he allowed 2 against Texas in the regionals, and he allowed 1 against Oregon in the Super Regional. So he is susceptible, and it just so happens that the Volunteers offense leads the nation with 178 tatas. I think they have 5 guys in 20-plus home runs, something ridiculous. But now you start looking at the prices. Christian Moore plus 190 is nothing special. I don't care how hot Christian Moore is. I just personally wouldn't play that. You're getting less than $2 on it. And, I do think there's going to be 1 to 3 home runs hit today total. But Christian Moore at plus 190 is not something I'm looking to get into. Not saying he can't or won't hit one, but I don't know, Doug. We talked about this off air. I think it's too ridiculous of a price. That's Aaron Judge territory where you're paying that kind of price for a home run to be hit. Next, we go to Billy Amick, he hasn't had a great College World Series, but this is never a guy to count out because he's projecting right now as a first-round talent, I would think. Plus 240 is an okay number. He's okay against lefties this year. He's batting 288. So let's take a pass on him. Then we start getting into the interesting territory. A player that has as much raw power as anybody in the game, Blake Burke, who, despite having a down power year with 20 home runs, he's plus 280. Blake Burke is killing lefties this year. He's in the 330s, I think, or higher. He's well over 300. I know that. And he's seeing the ball really well. And he's just made such improvements this year. I think 280 is a solid price for Blake Burke. Dylan Dreiling, 3-1. I don't count out Dylan Dreiling. He was a guy that I watched last year, and there were some struggles, Doug, but you knew this kid is going to be set up to do really well the following year, meaning this year. 3-1 solid there. But I got to say, my favorite play, and it's not just for the price. I genuinely think Kavaris Tears at plus 310 is the best bet here on the board. Kavaris Tears smashes lefties. He's hitting 345 against lefties. He's got a home run in 2 of his last 3 games in the College World Series. I think considering what you're getting the price at, with who you're getting it, I think Tears is a guy that I would probably look at if you're going to play the home run prop at plus 310. I'd probably say Tears is number 1 and then Burke's number 2. And here's the other reason. Kavaris Tears is respected, but mentally, when you're a pitcher and you have to go Christian Moore, Blake Burke, Billy Amick as the 1 through 3, which is probably the best 1 through 3 in the country. A&M, I would say, had it when Montgomery was healthy, but with him out, it's definitively Tennessee. Then you get to Tears, who usually bats 6th, and you think you kind of got a break, and mentally you're exhausted from having to deal with the top 3, then dryling at 4. I think Prager could be more liable to make a mistake here, just because he's trying to get the easy outs, a little bit more pitch to contact, and I think mentally this is something that could hurt him, and that's where I think Kavaris Tears would ultimately be the best bang for your buck. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I'm in 100% agreement with you. Like you said, the pricing wise, Tears is the guy who jumps off the page, just because, like you said, a lot of the top guys, they're honestly mispriced. For home run props, considering the environment, it's nowhere near fair value to be taking somebody like Christian Moore at plus 190. Like you said, it's not Aaron Judge. But Tears is the guy. I'm gonna join you on him tonight. I'm definitely in. You sold me. I'm here with the lefty splits, the weather, the lineup scenario. Like you said, if Prager is focused on getting that, the first 3 guys out, and like you said, more apt to make a mistake here against the back end of the order. Yeah, I'm sold on Tears.
Yeah, and I think there's just a legitimate chance that every single guy here could hit a home run. That's what they do. But it's hard because these numbers aren't that great. But 310 is I think a fair number for a guy who's got 18 home runs on the year and who's kind of like the forgotten star in this lineup. Tears had a fantastic year. He's batting just under 340. He hits the cover off the ball. And I'm kind of excited about this one. I feel like Tears is probably the most likely to hit a home run tonight outside of Christian Moore. So I do think the odds are a little long on this one. So I'd probably have Tears. I'd probably honestly have Tears over Billy Amick, to tell you the truth. I think I would most likely be looking at, if I was setting this market, to have Tears at about plus 260 and Burke plus 270. I think those two are like neck and neck. And the fact is, they do hit lefties really well. They hit the cover off the ball against left-handed pitchers. So, don't think just because they're lefties facing lefty pitcher, that's going to be a deterring factor, because it's not. Down over the Texas A&M side of things, I got to be honest, I personally don't love any of them, just because, you look at the prices. Jace Lavalette, $250. And here's the thing. You can't even realistically look at the pitching splits, because chances are Chris Stamos at most isn't going more than 1 time through the order, if he even makes it that far. And then AJ Causey is going to come in. So realistically, say each player gets 1 at-bat off Stamos. Then you're going to come in and bring Causey for probably 2 at-bats. And Causey's got that really slow changeup and that sinker that's below 80 miles an hour that, unless he hangs one, you're not putting it out of the ballpark. He's a ground ball. He's a ground ball machine, really. So I don't like any of these guys to hit a home run. Caden Sorrell is probably a good bet. I think Grahovec could get one, but to tell you the truth, with Lavalette ailing right now, I think Gavin can be pitched around. So I feel like if I was inclined to take an A&M bat to hit, a home run, I think it would be Sorrell. But I don't know if A&M is going to get one out of the park tonight. I don't like the way their offense has been playing. It's not strong. They've really only scored as much as they have, which, quite frankly, is not a lot because of the amount of walks that they've been working. I don't really think I see any real juice there.
Yeah, I agree with you. I wish there was a Lavalette no market, because I would work that way into some type of correlated parlay. Like you said, with him being banged up, just that price is ridiculous from what we've seen from him, and the injuries. And like you said, the biggest thing too about A&M's offense tonight is having to deal with the way Tennessee is going to match up against them. Obviously, we know, like you said, Stamos, then Causey, but they still have more guys behind them as well. They're going to play matchups. We saw Vitale have he's not willing to mess around. He's not willing to put his team in trouble in this College World Series. So, in terms of really being able to find value on the AM side, there isn't much. You want to talk about the Ryan Prager strikeout market?
I do. That was my next thing here. So Ryan Prager's strikeout prop is 5.5. There is an under, there's an over, and personally, my thing is this: you're looking at a guy realistically that's got to record a lot of strikeouts, and the worst part is that all these good hitters are stacked one by one. So assuming that Ryan Prager does what he's pretty much done and goes somewhere between 5 and 6 innings, and I got to be honest, I think just because of the level we're at in the game, this isn't the regular season where they're just Jim Schlossnagle is going to let Ryan Prager go. Most likely, I think Ryan Prager doesn't go more than 6 innings. And if he does, I think by that time, Tennessee is going to be able to figure it out. You look at Prager, he had 4 Ks against Kentucky. He had only 1 strikeout against Oregon in the Supers. He did have 7 against Texas. Tennessee in the SEC tournament can't really count it because it was an abbreviated start, just like a tune-up. He had 2. He had 9 against Arkansas, whose offense sucks. Ole Miss, he had 10. That offense isn't that great. LSU's offense only had 5. Georgia's offense, which is probably the most comparable lineup to Tennessee's, he had 6. So Ryan Prager, while I think he is definitely a strikeout kind of pitcher, in a situation like this where you don't know how long his leash is, and given the kind of team he's going against, I don't think I'd be looking higher here. I think him getting 6 strikeouts is probably his ceiling, maybe 7, maybe. But I feel like it's more likely that Prager goes under 5.5 than over.
Yeah, I agree. That's exactly where I was going with this. Like you said, Prager is somebody who's shown that strikeout upside, but it's going to be tough for him to get the strikeout the second or even third time through the order, saying he does go 6. This is a high-level Tennessee lineup that's going to adjust. Obviously, like you said, they've seen him once abbreviatedly, so they're going to have a good idea of what they're getting. Even though hit rate-wise, season-long price, the price would tell you to take the over here and maybe even, on the ladder. But for this matchup specifically, the under is the side. I'd say it's 5.5. It's under 5.5 at nothing here. But I don't know if I'll get there. It's just that, like you said, there's questions about Prager's length. If he's a strikeout an inning guy and he goes 6, we're in trouble.
Yeah, I mean, listen, at the end of the day, I could see this going a couple different ways. Ryan Prager's their guy. Without him, they wouldn't be here. Jim Schlossnagle probably wants to give a little faith to his ace. But at the same time, it's like if Prager's in trouble in the 4th inning and he's already got 75 pitches, and maybe he only has 3 strikeouts, possibly he gets the 5th inning if he's facing the bottom of the lineup. But it also depends. Right? How does he move through this lineup? Let's say it's coming into the 5th inning. He's got 75 pitches. He hasn't looked that sharp. He's gotten behind hitters all day, and he's lucky to only giving up like 3 runs. Does Schlossnagle give him one more crack with the top of the lineup coming up, Or does he go to Chris Cortez, a guy that can go 3 innings, a guy that is a high strikeout guy? And then he's got a couple other horses behind him, and he's got Ashton Beck to close it out at the end of the day. I think there's a lot of factors, especially like what happens if Texas A&M gets up 4-0 and Ryan Prager's pitching well enough, and it's like, okay, we have a little bit of a lead. We have the privilege to let him go. I got to be honest, though. I think there's more scenarios where the under 5.5 is the better play. I wouldn't be shocked to see him get 6, 7, or even 8 strikeouts if he's able to go 6 innings, because after all, he is a strikeout pitcher. But I just think, like, all the different scenarios going on, that it's more likely that Prager pitches under 5.5 strikeouts. And that doesn't mean he has a bad game. He can go out there, go 5 innings, 2 runs, 5 strikeouts, and be done. That's a great start, especially in a championship game. But Doug, I think we're both kind of in lockstep here, where it's under or no play. I got to think if I'm going to officially card that one. I'm kind of talking myself into it. I'm probably going to – I feel like I have to card that one officially, plus money. So I think I'm going to do that. We've seen a lot of these strikeout markets throughout the year be wrong. And that's why a book like FanDuel's not putting them out throughout the second half of the year, because every single start, it's Chase Burns, it's Hagen Smith, it's Santucci, all these guys. Is there anything else that you wanted to cover? Maybe like a game prop or innings, race to whichever run?
The only thing that I was looking at it a little bit, for the way, obviously we're viewing Tennessee's scoring a little bit different here, Johnny and I, but Tennessee to score 4.5, or to Tennessee to race to 4 or race to 5 is a good number as well, other than playing the Tennessee money line. Our boys over here at College Baseball Insider have the balls projected for 6.3 runs, so that would cover both legs there. Obviously, I definitely see 4 runs out of this lineup, whether half of that comes against Prager or all of it comes against Prager. I feel like that's a very strong angle.
Personally, I think it's just it's difficult. The thing that's kind of throwing me is the Chris Stamos factor. Like, how long is he going to go? Because if he doesn't go 3 innings, that means he probably got relatively lit up in the first 2. We saw it against Florida State, where he got himself in trouble early, and Tony V pulled him out after 8 pitches. So I think this is really a toss-up here, and the race to 4, 5 runs, 6 runs, maybe which bat catches the jet stream the right way. But the thing I'm probably the most confident is neither to 7. That's one I've played, and I actually ended up getting a worse number because it's lengthened out a little bit. But I don't think either team scores 7 runs, and that kind of coincides a little bit with my A&M plus 2.5 and my under 12.5. I feel like the way I've mapped it out in my head, I'm going to see something like a 6-4 or a 5-3 kind of game. I got to be honest. I don't know if I see this getting over 10 runs total, because I just think we're going to see really good pitching from A&M. That's what they've done. That's what, when their top stars of their rotation is grooving, that's how they operate. They don't allow a lot of runs, and kind of going the fact that they haven't really been scoring that much. I don't think they've broken 6 runs yet in the tournament. I think it was 6 against Florida, and then the first game was 4 against Florida, and then Kentucky, they scored 4 runs, 3 runs. So I'm not 100% sold on the fact that, or it was 5 runs against Kentucky. So I'm not exactly sold on the fact that A&M is going to come out here and score. Like, Jason Lavalette being banged up is a huge factor, because when you're missing your 2 best players, other guys are going to have to step up, and they're going to have to step up consistently. They're going to have to step up with runners on base, and quite frankly, I don't know if I see it.
Yeah, definitely. That under 7 is interesting just for the price you're getting. That's something that I've actually taken earlier in the tournament with the wind blowing in. Just the way I didn't think it was properly factored in. And like you said, if you're confident in the pitching, you have very well reason to be. So that neither team to reach 7 is a nice little plus money shot to take as well. I agree with you, Johnny.
Yeah. And then I got a little cute here. I did A&M first 5 innings. I did a little sprinkle on A&M, and I actually caught a little bit worse of a price on this one as well. I'll review my whole card in a minute, but A&M plus 170. I got them at plus 165. I think there is a good chance that A&M can get on Chris Stamos early. I feel like the fact is I could see A&M score 2 or 3 runs in the first 4 innings. Stamos, they could get 1 or 2 off of. Maybe they get 1 off of Quasi. If Ryan Prager, who they have the definitive edge in pitching off, like on paper, in the first half of the game, Texas A&M does. So I do think there's a likelihood that I'm seeing a path for A&M, who's got a really good number here. When you're getting a pitching advantage the way they are, that you're getting them at this number, I think it's worth the play. So I put that out there. But then I also see a tie. I also see I think we could see a 1-1 or 2-2 first 5 innings. And I got that at 6-1. It's now plus 650. I put that out for half a unit just because, a lot of these games tend to be close with these SEC teams. So I think a tie and a 3-way market is pretty interesting. I think it's too big of a number, considering what teams are playing. This isn't as big of a talent gap as the market is suggesting. So I think, considering what kind of line you're getting on a tie in the first 5, I think it's definitely tempting to throw a little bit of money on here, Doug.
Yeah, it's definitely. I agree with you. The tie priced, it's a nice shot, but considering we think both teams are going to score by then, it's definitely exactly what it is. It's a shot,
Yeah.
Obviously, we're seeing.
Listen, I'm not expecting. That's why it's a half unit.
Games going different.
Yeah, I mean, listen, that's why it's a half unit play. It kind of has more of a feel towards that under 12.5 that I have as well. It's going to be a tighter game. You never know. Ryan Prager has actually been better. Most of his last like 5 starts, A&M's has won the first 5. So I think there is a path here. And listen, if Drew Beam was throwing, maybe I'd think about it, just because, even though Drew Beam is a little bit of a wider variance guy, if he came out there, he's capable of going 5 shutout innings, as is Prager. So, I do think that was something that was in my head as well. But I've actually covered everything, that I felt like was necessary. But if you have any other props that you want to talk about that we might have missed, I'm all ears.
No, yeah, I'm all good. Like I said, sidewise, I have this Tennessee future in my back pocket, and I kind of went over the 2 ways that I'm going to mainly play tonight with the first 3, both teams to score, and Tennessee to not bat in the 9th, which is kind of also backing Tennessee here.
Well, I like it. I think it's a pretty good way for you to attack it. I do not have any futures left. The only thing I have is Charlie Condon, Golden Spikes tonight. So hopefully, Travis Pisana as well. But hopefully, we can get Condon home. He deserves it. 37 tatas, north of 430 batting average on a team that was not expected to go anywhere this year, where Oregon State and Arkansas were 2 of the top 10 College World Series preseason favorites. So I think it should be Charlie Condon's award. But so my final game 1 card here. We got the under 12.5 minus 152. It's an alternate line, a little bit of juice, but I think it's a worthy play. A&M first 5 money line plus 165. A&M plus 2.5 minus 180. A first 5 tie, half unit 6-1, and neither scores 7 runs at plus 155. I will be adding my Ryan Prager under 5.5 strikeouts at plus 110 as well. Doug, it's been a pleasure, my friend. If we go to a game 3, I'm thinking maybe we try to get another little end of the year pod in. But one thing I do know is we'll definitely be back for the draft. We're going to be doing some previews leading up to the draft and then ultimately on draft day, because there's usually some pretty good betting markets. Last year, the first overall pick with Paul Skeens was crazy. I took a little Langford, and there's always smoke screens like, oh, the high school guy might go 1-1. I think at a certain point you stop falling for that. So this year's gonna be interesting, but realistically, in my opinion, there's only 3 guys that are likely to go 1-1 this year. I don't care what anybody else says. It's gonna be Burns, it's gonna be Cags, it's gonna be Condon. Well, 4 and Bazzana, but I don't know. I can't wrap my head around Travis Bazzana going 1-1. Just can't. I think we can make a case now. Christian Moore should be going ahead of Travis Bazzana the way he's played and the tools he has. But everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. We really appreciate you being a fan of the pod all year long and tuning into us. You guys make what we do worthwhile, and we really appreciate all your support. And this is not the last Breaking Bet podcast of the year. We will be back. Stay tuned on my Twitter _JohnnyVTV. Stay tuned with Doug at Doug Ziefel. Check out his work on Action Network. He had a pretty nice day yesterday. So we thank you guys so much, and we really appreciate it, and best of luck this weekend.